Well, hello. We're here with another open mic segment. You got Tom Fournier and Chris McKay. We're going to share this one because it highlights a project that we both, I guess we thought about and then got dragged into prior to the bicentennial of the War of 1812. And then, Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot. Maybe explain really quick what this open mic series is.
Yeah, absolutely. So as part of our lecture series, we've had a number of people approach us and say, "I've got a topic that I'd love to present on your channel," and for various reasons, it doesn't exactly fit in, or we've got a full schedule, and so we're trying to incorporate something a little bit different, where we can have people come in and do a shorter presentation that we tape. It's doesn't get um, the same time period, same time slot that our normal lecture series would, but it still gives us the opportunity to get those people on our website and share their knowledge.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then, yeah, we're experimenting with ourselves, and I think after this one, we'll open this up to applications for people that want to share their knowledge, research, content, and it's a way to get that out to our audience through our website and the YouTube channel. So let's talk about the War of 1812 casualty database. Where did the idea come from, Chris? What was the inspiration for this?
So, like all projects, Tom, that you and I put together, it's probably started over a glass of beer. We I believe there are a few really main characters involved in this story. Of course, Tom and myself, Glenn Stott, and our good friend Ray Hobbs, who passed away just over a year ago. But the four of us came across, I believe it was an article from Don Graves, who's the War of 1812 author and historian, and he had put together a couple casualty lists from Niagara battles, specifically Chippewa and Lundy's Lane. And these were articles, I think they were just published in sort of a military magazine of some sort. And it was literally a list of all the British casualties from those battles, and what had happened to them, where they were from, that sort of thing, just straight from the casualty returns. And the four of us were sitting together and said, why does this not exist for the entire War of 1812? And who on earth could head a project up with something like that? So that was about 2008, and 2009. We were rapidly approaching the bicentennial celebrations of the War of 1812, and the four of us together started saying, well, maybe the four of us could put together a website, a database that contains all those names from across the entire war, starting from these articles and really building on them.
Cool. And then I also recall the units we were both involved with, the reenacting units, were also very supportive, the 41st Regiment and then the Royal Scot Light Company. And then I see here the goal of the database is to list the names of soldiers in British regiments of foot. Is that what this represents, just British soldiers?
So that, as you say, was certainly the starting point. So we started with the regiments of foot. As you say, started with the first, the Royal Scots, the 41st, the 49th, the 89th, sort of the big, what we think of as the big players in the War of 1812, certainly in our region. After that, we expanded to Fencible Regiments that served, did really yeoman's work in the War of 1812, thinking about the Incorporated Militia of Upper Canada, the Glengarry Light Infantry Fencibles, and even the 104th, which grew out of the New Brunswick Fencibles. So we sort of slowly spread to Fencible Regiments, and from there, we also included, as best we could, the Canadian Militia. The records for the Canadian Militia are not as precisely kept as they were for the regiments of foot. And then after that, we actually spread to the Provincial Marine, which was the Great Lakes Naval component. And from there, we even spread to the Royal Navy. And so there we're sort of blockading and fighting against privateers and against the Americans on the high seas. So it really started with those regiments of foot and exploded into trying to cover all different aspects of the British military and Canadian military.
So sounds quite comprehensive. Does something similar to this exist for US casualties for the War of 1812?
That's a good question. I don't believe so. Do you know of anything similar?
No, we had looked, and then the best that we had come across were some books, where they tried to capture and list, but I'm not quite sure how comprehensive that is. But then that was far beyond our scope and funding. So hopefully we'd still love to see a complementary database that captures that on the US side. And then coming back to Don Graves, he helped us get the US casualties at the battles of Lundy's Lane. And I remember at the 200th anniversary of that, you and I taking turns at the monument reading out all the casualties from both sides of the conflict there through the course of the evening. And then what about Indigenous casualties?
Yeah, unfortunately, this is one, of course, that we would love to add, and it's just not something that we have managed to find right now. Of course, most of the Indigenous records are oral traditions, oral records, which are incredibly valuable, but it's just much more difficult to track down. So I guess as part of this video, if anybody is able to point us in the right direction or help us out or has a name, we've certainly tried to track down some people that might be able to help us out. And we just haven't managed to. But if anybody has any information about where we could find Indigenous names, we would really, truly love to add them to our list as vital components of this of the defense of Canada.
Very much so. All right, well, that's some good background. Let's dive into the database itself, and then how someone could use this. And I might want to point out that another reason this is being highlighted as one of these open mic videos is that the History Symposium has taken over the management of this website and ensuring its continuation. So, donations to History Symposium help keeping this updated and paying for the domain registration and hosting fees. But to go into the casualty database, then a great starting point is just to click on that right there. And then that will take you to a field that looks like this. So, as a starting point, and it's our belief, most people want to look at the casualties associated with a specific event or battle. So if you click that little drop down, then you start seeing some choices. So you'll see here, casualties at some specific places, also aboard some ships, and then we start to see some naval actions. So basically, if a place of death or a casualty was listed on a casualty return, then we've captured it here in this database, and you will see that the list is quite extensive, as the samples I'm showing doesn't even gets us through the C's and just started into the D's. So, what if we pick one of these specific actions, and I'm looking at the action with the USS Chesapeake, then what do we see when we click on that? Well, this is what we come back with. You'll see the names of the individuals, their rank, what entity they were a member of. So this is pretty one-dimensional, right? It was a one-on-one ship action, the Shannon versus the Chesapeake. So everyone's likely to be part of the Shannon. If applicable, who is their company officer? This is much more so for the regiments. And then if there's a notation, what county or country they came from, what their occupation was. And then manner of death, Chris, what sort of things show up in this column? Because this is really what gives them the notation of being a casualty.
Yeah, so when we first started putting the database together, we started looking at the casualty records, which, as I say, for the regiments of foot are very detailed, and this is sort of exactly the layout you would see. So they would cover things like killed in action, um, missing after action, prisoner of war. Sometimes for a prisoner of war, we would have to follow up, see what actually happened to them, because sometimes they would be listed as a prisoner of war, but it turned out that they were actually killed. So missing was very common. That's just, we don't know what happened to them, especially after a retreat, for example. But then we had to make the decision, because there were also in the casualty returns, there were desertions listed. And so we had to decide whether to include desertions in a casualty database. And we ended up including that. We did decide to include that just because that is an incredible wealth of data that, although it might not specifically, you might think, well, they're not really casualties. No, but going through the database anyway, that's just an incredible wealth of data that it's too big to ignore. So those are sort of the big ones that we have: killed in action, missing, prisoner of war, deserted, and then general died, which probably leads to death from disease or something like that, which is different from um, died of wounds. So those two were distinguished as well.
All right, thanks. And then as you look at your search result, you know, if you've chosen an action, then I also want to point out how you can maybe reorder or resort the search. So any of these fields you can click on, and then that becomes the basis for the ordering. So in this case, if we click on rank, we'll go from seeing that them listed by first name, or sometimes by last name. So we resort by rank, and then you will see that is what the sorting works out to be. So it can be useful if you're looking for a specific role, you know, in a naval action, how many of the lieutenants were killed, or how, you know, what happened with the Marines. So you can resort in that fashion. And then let's try another type of event. So we'll use the drop down again. And this time, I'm going to look at by general court martial. That one caught my eye, and I was curious what would show up in here. And here's a unfortunate individual, Hugh Lester, who was found guilty by general court martial and executed on the 25th of November in 1814. So kind of bad timing for him, as the conflict was largely wrapping up in North America. And then another way of doing this, let's go to, I'm going to pick the Battle of the Thames, also the Battle of Moraviantown. That's something I've studied extensively, and you'll actually see a couple of videos I have done on our YouTube channel related to that. So if we look at Thames, then here is all the casualties, and not a surprise, largely for the 41st Regiment that showed up here. All right, how else can we use this database? So rather than just searching by place of event, you can see highlighted there some words that say advanced search. So if you click on advanced search, then you end up with a whole new screen and a lot more search options. So you could fill this out quite completely, but generally speaking, I think if you give it some broad parameters, then you'll have more results to look at. So, you know, just for giggles, let's try putting my own last name in here and see if there were any Fourniers involved in the War of 1812. And look at that, there's a Jerome Fournier with the 104th or New Brunswick Fencibles that died on the 16th of May in 1813. All right, how else can you use this? You have the drop down, and then you can see there's quite a listing of regiments. Like Chris said, we started out thinking a few regiments of foot, and then this quickly went beyond that. And then also in some instances, we have multiple battalions in the same theater of war. So, and then you see a whole bunch of ships listed as well too. So picking a specific regiment, we'll see what that looks like. What a surprise. I'm going to choose the 41st Regiment to look at. And so then you can see a number of different individuals. You could try, changing the ordering terms. If you wanted to sort by rank or by county or date, you could do that. Or something else you can do. Let's say we know the 41st, we're at the Battle of Lundy's Lane. So if we pick that as the place of event, and then here are the members of the 41st that died specifically at Lundy's Lane. And then I thought a good way to illustrate, the database and some ways to use it would be to look at a very specific large action, so that the Battle of Fort Erie, but then we see a number of different terms related to Fort Erie. So, this is really literal transcription of what shows up in the casualty returns. We had, place of death, some being Fort Erie, some the Fort Erie assault, which we'll assume to be the night assault in August of 1814. The siege of Fort Erie, and actually Fort Erie was an extended siege from August 4th to September 21st, 1814. And then another, which a lot of people consider a minor action, the sortie, which happened in September of 1814. So let's dig a little bit into Fort Erie. And I think this illustrates some of the value of this casualty base, or what gave us inspiration. You can see an aerial view of Fort Erie there. We have some good friends that work at Fort Erie. One of them likes describing it as, Canada's bloodiest battlefield. It's certainly a very small, compact space where a lot happened. And there's a monument on the grounds of Fort Erie. And this is very similar to a lot of the monuments, or you even see the after action reports that the commanding officer would have written. So maybe they highlight the regiments that were involved in an action, and if you're lucky, then they might highlight the officers that fell during that battle, but certainly very little in terms of a reference to the rank and file that were there. So if we look at the assault on Fort Erie, and then you'll see that this is really quite substantial, right? And to my knowledge, Chris, I don't know I've seen a list of the men that died at Fort Erie anywhere else. So
No, absolutely. I think this is the only one in existence.
So you can see a variety of regiments, the individuals' names, the ranks, a lot of rank and file. We do capture the officers that also died at the battle. So we had a variety of sources that we cross-referenced and checked and tried as much as possible to capture everyone associated with these battles. And the list goes on and on. This is the night assault of August 15th. And it's remarkable when you look at all these poor, unfortunate individuals. The War of 1812 was considered a secondary theater, and these were quite small battles without significant casualties. And that brings us to the end of the night assault. But I also mentioned the sortie. So this is getting into September. The British are pushing their siege lines ever closer to Fort Erie, which is held by the Americans at the time. and the Americans decide they're going to send out quite a strong sortie and try to capture the siege lines and destroy the siege works. And so here's the casualties associated with this action. And you see, it's also quite an extensive list.
You'll also notice some of those regiments that had served in the peninsula with Wellington, and then were sent over here, thinking the war was over. Similar to the Chesapeake or the New Orleans campaign, right? And sent over here, and who knows how long they survived in the peninsula just to be sent here to die in North America.
Yeah, the 6th Regiment really jumps out here, right? Because they showed up very late in the campaign, and there's lots of accounts of the siege lines around Fort Erie, the longer standing units that have been in North America for quite some time, talking to them and trying to urge caution because of the marksmanship of the Americans, and particularly the riflemen. And there were a lot of hard lessons learned there. So this is the sortie, September 17th, but then there was 2 other Fort Erie's listed there. So this one shows up in casualty returns as the siege of Fort Erie. So there'd be countless skirmishes, sorties, battery fire, counter battery fire. So lots of stuff happening constantly in the area of Fort Erie, resulting in quite a number of casualties as well. And then we're not quite done with Fort Erie yet. Then there was also, these folks that were showed up in casualty returns as just Fort Erie. So some of this might be data cleanup. You see POWs listed and more killed in actions on subsequent dates, or maybe it is just just naming or completion variances by the administrative clerks associated with regiments. So I guess that kind of wraps up what we wanted to highlight with the database. We really encourage people to explore, to look around. If you're reading about a battle, look it up here and get a sense for the actual individuals that may have been profoundly affected by that battle. And then also it gives you an idea of the magnitude of some of these affairs. So Chris, we went from thinking the database would be, a few regiments and maybe a couple hundred names. How many entries do we in fact have here?
So if we include all the soldiers and the sailors, we have over 13 or nearly 13,000 names in our database.
So that blows me away. When you validated that number the other day. So it's really quite a remarkable database and volume of numbers, and then keeping into mind that 13,000 is the casualties. So how many more men were actually actively engaged, in this theater of war? So that's mind-boggling. So I guess while we are the public face for this database, it was actually a lot of contributors to this. Chris, maybe you can speak to the research and transcription part of it.
Yeah, so Andrew Bamford, we really have to thank for the vast majority of the naval records. He did most of the naval research for us. Mike Shingleton, I don't know if Mike is still with us, but he did a lot of the legwork, taking photos of the casualty returns and the pay lists in the National Archives in Kew in London. And then a lot of these other names, Eamon, Chris Radajewski, they were also Peter Monahan. They helped with sort of the hard work of going through, pouring through these records and cross-referencing names and adding them to spreadsheets and then uploading to the database. And then several other people, like I said, we started with Don Graves, Keith Holick, Ron Dale. These people shared their own research with me. They had done, for example, some of these people would be looking at the Battle of York and trying to find casualties there. And they would share that research with us as well. So lots of huge contributors beyond just the two of us.
And then financial contributions. This was probably one of the more expensive projects we've undertaken. We did pay researchers, and with the sheer volume of work, some of the transcription work, we also paid to get completed, and then there was also the costs associated with the website, so the design, development, hosting, domain name registration. So quite a number of personal donations, many of which came from reenactors associated with groups that recreate some of the regiments listed in the database. We did put an appeal out to Royal Canadian Legion branches, I believe in Ontario, and quite a number of the branches came back with donations to support this undertaking. Several museums had contributed money towards it, and then ultimately coming into the bicentennial years, we applied for and received a grant from the Government of Canada, which really helped us push this across the finish line and making it a lot more comprehensive and robust than we ever thought it could be. So, and then I think, Chris, you were the driving force behind coordinating so much of this effort while still managing a full-time job and other projects that I had assigned you. So quite a team effort and quite a strong team, that project that we're really pleased to be part of. And just in wrapping up, this is the War of 1812 monument on Parliament Hill in Ottawa. And I think a parallel here, we viewed this database as kind of our tribute, especially to the common soldier and sailor that served during the War of 1812, especially those that sacrificed their lives as much as possible. We wanted to try to identify them and preserve their name and contributions for as long as we possibly can. So I think that's our story here. Chris, anything more to add? Or
Yeah, I was just going to, just on that point you were making, conversations with retired Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Riley, and he said something, the quotation is at the top of the website now, but it was rather meaningful to us. He said, "Time doesn't diminish their sacrifice." So these men that gave their lives 200 years ago, just because it was that long ago, doesn't mean it's worth anything less. So that's really, that quotation sticks with us throughout this monument, as Tom said, to their sacrifice.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. If you're hearing me say this, then you watch the video. We really appreciate your attention and your support. And then look for more content as we seek to find more individuals willing to add their own stories to our open mic series. So thanks, Chris, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.